1 Samuel chapter 17, and I'm sure that you could easily figure out from what we read this morning what account it is that we are looking at. Now, if I can just find my notes. There they are. I've got too much stuff up here. So this morning, as you will see, the title of this morning is a question that I am going to present to you. I'm going to ask you it once right now, and then I'm going to ask you again at the end. We will see if how your answers differ. Now, when I say this, I don't mean I want you to verbally say out to me, I want you to answer this to yourself. And that is, how big is your God? We can very easily, as Christians, very easily say, "Oh, my God is great. My God is big. My God can handle anything." But, okay, that's very easy to say. But do you really mean that? And I will give you, this morning, what we're going to look at. I think I hope not, but might make you consider and see why it is that I am presenting this question, and why it is that I am also presenting this question in a church that, as far as I know, looking around here, at least the vast majority, of you profess having Christ in your heart. Why would you ask this to Christians? You will find out. So, this morning, as we're looking at this, just to set the scene of this, of course, the account of David and Goliath. You have the Israelites going against, I wouldn't use the term fighting, but in a second you'll see that's not the case, but they're in a battle with the Philistine army. And one thing that was very common back then, especially with families that had more people in the war, is that the one child or whatever, they would send one with a home-cooked meal to the battlefield for the kids. And that is what Jesse decided to do. He decided to send David to with some good home-cooked food out to his brothers who are on the battlefield. Now, this was essentially twofold. It wasn't just a thing of good, being able to have a good home-cooked meal. I'm sure those of you who are here who were in the military, especially years ago, from what I hear, the MREs nowadays are much better compared to what they used to be. From what I have heard other veterans mention before, is that one of the first things that they wanted to do for those who had been deployed, when they got back, the first thing they wanted to do was have a good home-cooked meal. So, but there's two reasons for that. Not just because they had that battlefield food, they had those MREs that are just made to keep you alive. They weren't made to necessarily be good tasting, but it was also a mental thing. I guarantee you that any of you veterans that have experienced that, when you come back, the difference between, if you were to go after church this morning, go out to eat, have a big juicy burger, oh, that's delicious, that's good. That first big juicy burger that you have when you get back from from being overseas, from being in battle, when you take that first bite, it's not like, oh, this is delicious, it's like peaceful. It gives a relaxing. It really goes beyond physical need to a mental faction as well. So that was the two purposes of sending David to the battlefield, was to check on the brothers, but also to bring them food to be able to help their mental state as well. And as what we will see is, though they obviously had not only some mental issues going on, but also some heart problems as well. And so in seeing what we're going to look at this morning, it wasn't just Jesse, okay, sending David in that sense, okay? Just as I shared a little bit ago, just a few minutes ago, with God working with Pastor, the pastor wasn't planning on being at camp Wednesday, but God knew that there were friends there. There were people there that needed Pastor, okay? It's this same way. But who was it in this case that needed this young boy who needed David? The whole Israelite army, to be honest. Okay? And that is what we're going to look at this morning. So here you have this fairly young boy, and by this, we use the term young boy, and the first thing that might come into mind is somebody as young as, say, Derek or little Daniel, okay? He was a shepherd. We know by the term boy being used is that he would have been under 16, okay? Knowing, and if you look at the life of David as a shepherd, okay, God has given him the strength in the past to defeat a lion, to defeat a bear in protecting his sheep and protecting these animals he was in charge of. And it wasn't like he had a good old gun to be able to carry with him and take out these animals from a long distance, okay? One of those, he actually had to wrestle. So even though he was a boy, and we see that in verse, what verse is that? I didn't pull it out beforehand.
34.
No, actually it was in verse 42 is what I wanted to, verse 42 is part of the scripture reading this morning. It says at the end of the verse, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. Okay, so in other words, what we are seeing here is we are seeing as they called it, a youth, a boy, someone under 16. He was of a fair countenance. Even though he was a shepherd, he was not a, how can I put this? He was a little bit more fair-skinned, okay? He wasn't one that necessarily had a bunch of calluses on his hands. He did not do hard labor in that sense of the word, okay? But so here we have David. I'm sure he's excited too. You know, all his brothers are off at battle, and I'm sure he's got this picture in his head. He's like, yes, I'm going to go see my brothers, but beyond that, I'm going to get to go and see all these brave soldiers. I'm going to get to see all these soldiers in their armor. I'm going to get to see them with their swords, with their spears, with all their weapons. I mean, typical boy. Oh, that's going to be so cool. And you can imagine how excited he is in making this travel to the battlefield. And I can just picture him as he's coming upon this valley from a distance. Okay, I know the valley is just over this next, just up over this next ridge here. And maybe he even gets really excited and gets running, comes up and over this expecting to see a true battlefield. And instead all he sees is an empty valley with just an encampment on one side and an encampment on the other. Nothing really exciting going on. But you know what? He's still going to be able to get to see these big, brave soldiers, right? In their shining armor. So he gets going down. He gets down into the camp, and instead he sees the exact opposite of what he was expecting to see. He was expecting to see these big, brave soldiers. Well, he would have been able to see their shining armor. Should have been real shiny because they weren't doing anything. He would have been able to see those the spears and the swords and see all of that. But being able to see and talk to these big, brave soldiers was something he was looking forward to. As he comes down, though, instead he sees that's not the case. If you, two verses I'm going to pull out right now out of 1 Samuel 17. Verse 11, please. 1 Samuel 17, verse 11. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. And then in verse 24, the same chapter, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. Okay? So what we have here, David is coming down into the Israel encampment, expecting to see these brave soldiers, and instead he sees all these men, this whole army, scared out of their minds. And then what does he hear? He hears a great big booming voice, one that is loud enough to be able to, and it's not a thing of, oh, it's echoing across the valley. I can hear someone yelling from across the valley, from the Philistine encampment. I can hear them, but I can't quite make it out. No, this booming voice was so loud coming across that you could hear every single word that this man was saying. And this man that we're talking about, of course, is Goliath. Now, when I say this was a man, this guy, it actually says in the Bible, he was a giant. He was just shy of 10 feet tall. And going off of what we would consider would be, like, I met a guy once. He was ex-military, and he was into I'll call it all natural bodybuilding. No supplements or whatever, just working out what God gave him. This guy was probably about 6'6", must have been pushing 300 pounds, solid muscle. I mean, there was next to nothing on him for fat. Okay? So if you take that picture that I just gave you of this guy and you put it to the scale of Goliath, you're looking at a guy who, it even says in here, he trained from his youth. As from the point of a kid, he trained to be a soldier. Okay, so this isn't going to be a guy that's got a big old beer belly and, he is going to be, that's what all he's known. Okay, so 10 foot tall. Going off of that, this guy is possibly pushing 600 pounds of solid muscle. Okay? And I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but all of his armor and his spear, his sword, were extremely large. They were ones that the typical guy could not handle in war. In fact, his shield, it says, we'll see a little bit later, was so large that it was, this poor guy, there was another soldier, that's all he did, was carrying his shield, because his shield had to be so large because of how big he was. Now, the Philistine army was known for being giants. In fact, in evening service, we've been looking at Moses, and when the 12 spies went into the promised land, it mentions Canaanites and everything. Canaanites are more of a broad term. There are multiple cities and people that would be included in that. One of those would be the Philistines, okay? They were known, and that's why the Israelites were not able to go into the promised land right away. Because so many of them, those spies, they saw the giants and got scared. That's who we're talking about, the Philistines. They were typically very large men. But Goliath, the genes and everything worked out perfect to make him an incredible size. So here you have David, and he hears this. He hears Goliath defying, making fun of, putting down not just the Israelites, okay? Not just the Israelite army, okay? But he's also going at God. And as David takes it, he's not just putting down God, he's putting down my God. the Israelites feared this Philistine giant, because he seemed to be invincible. They look at this guy, you would think that, that they might come up with a battle plan. Saying, okay, because one of the challenges that Goliath is giving is, send me your champion. I'm the Philistine champion, send me your champion. You would think that the Israelite army might be able to come up with a battle plan. It means we might be sacrificing a soldier. But once they get down there in the bottom of the valley, just the two of them to fight, then we can rush down as an army and take out this giant, take out the champion of the Philistines. Well, then we're going to have that advantage, because then we're going to put this fear in the Philistine army. Okay? Nope. They didn't even think that. When they saw the problem that was in front of them, this problem that to them, they weren't looking at it in the sense of we have an army. They're looking at it in an individual sense. They looked at this problem, this Philistine giant, as one that there was no possible way for them to be able to overcome this. It was impossible for one man to take this out, and that's what they had constantly in their head. And they believed that their future depended solely on their own abilities. They didn't even consider entrusting God for their deliverance. In our lives, we have many problems, many issues that may come up. Saying, I think I can guarantee, I'll put it this way, I think I can guarantee that every one of us in this sanctuary here in this church building, has either possibly now or at one time in your life, you have had a Goliath in your life. A problem that you looked at as, this problem is unsolvable. It is unbeatable. No matter what you do, for some reason, you just cannot overcome this problem. You maybe even have, as Christians, maybe even praying, and saying, God, please take care of this. I can't do it. Please take care of it. So first we need to find the solution to our unsolvable problems. Now, one thing I want to point out, so it was not just the army. It was not just the military of the Israelites that was there. The king himself was there. Who was the king? King Saul. But also, what was special about King Saul? He was the Israelites' first king. God placed him there. He knew this. He was ordained by God to be the first king because the Israelites wanted a king. Did he consider, maybe we ought to talk to God about this? No. Saul, though, too, if you go back and look at, previously, Saul was an above average guy when it came to his height and his build as well. It says that for the average Israelite man, he was head and shoulders taller than them. Okay? Saul was a big guy. And you notice it said that Saul, in verse 11, it said, when Saul and all Israel heard those words, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Even Saul was considering it, thinking of it in his own strength. Saul looked within his own ranks for their deliverance from this giant, instead of within himself. In other words, searching, talking to God about it. Let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 10 and verse 23. I didn't think I had it, but I do. This is talking about Saul. They ran and fetched him thence And when he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from his shoulders and upward. He was head and shoulders. He was above average. He was a big guy himself. Well then, Saul hears all of a sudden, he hears the gossiping, the whisper going through the encampment, it suddenly reaches him that, there is someone here that is willing to go to battle, that is willing to take on this Philistine. So he sends for them. And to his surprise, Saul was presented with an answer that he knew would not work. So what we are seeing here is little David, this youth, this young boy with, as it says, ruddy with fair countenance. Say more of a soft-handed boy. When he found out and he heard what this Philistine was doing, and his brothers even weren't doing anything, he went from brother to brother to brother, it says, okay? Why aren't you doing something about this? He's defying God. And what his brothers said, it says each one in turn did the same, answered him the same, was they went and they said to him, "Oh, hush up. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not a soldier. You don't know anything about battle." And it says that after he spoke to his first brother about it, when he didn't get the answer, when David did not get the answer he wanted, it said at that point he turned his back to his brother. He ignored him and said, well, obviously you don't know what you're talking about. I think it was Eliab or something like that, his brother. He turns to the next one. It says he started one after another. Same answer he was getting from them. They were just looking at him as this little boy. You don't know what you're talking about. We'll see what difference is. David, sure enough, his brothers were right. David knew absolutely nothing about war. He knew nothing about battle plans. He knew nothing about strategy in that sense. No, he didn't. He wasn't trained to be able to wear armor. He was not trained on how to handle a sword or handle a spear. However, one big difference. See, David's faith, the way that David looked at God, that Philistine was nothing but a puny little guy. Here you have David, a small young man, but when he looked at Goliath, he didn't see this enormous man that could basically just step on him and squish him like a little bug. The way he looked at it in the sense of, my God, step on him and squish him like a little bug. Okay? He was not looking at himself at all in this. So here we have, David is saying this, and he has now said that he will go and take on Goliath. Well, this gets back to Saul. And Saul goes and he calls for David. David goes and he meets him and all of this. Then we see in verse 33, Saul said to David, "Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. You're but a youth. He's a man of war from his youth." Saul was presented with an answer he knew wouldn't work. He sees this young boy come in. He's thinking, oh, okay, this must be the younger brother of this great soldier. That's this brave, big soldier that's going to be coming in and saying, I'm going to take on Goliath. And he finds out, no, this little boy is. He's like, it's impossible. Saul's like, I'm this big guy, and I know it's impossible for me to take on this giant. I know it's impossible for me to take on this problem, and yet, here's this young boy. If it's impossible for me, it's definitely impossible for him. God many times provides the answer, just like he did here, in the most unlikely candidate. So at this point, Saul goes and he's just like, well, if this is it, is the only person that's going to come forward. Doesn't make sense in my head. Okay, fine. So when it came to preparing for the battle, and it's the same way with us in our lives, with issues that we have in our lives as well, is preparing for the battle before us. David was given armor. He was given spears, sword, the helmet, the whole 9 yards, okay? In fact, Saul said, I have the best of the best. Mine is being the king. It has to protect even more of me than the average soldiers might. So because of that, I am going to give you, David, I'm going to give you my stuff. Well, his intentions, I guess, were good, but how much sense does that make? You've got this smaller kid here, young man, and then you've got this guy that's, head and shoulders above everyone else. Obviously, it's not even going to fit. So, of course, that's what happens. David puts it on. He's like, okay, whatever, I'll try it on. Saul believed that this was the only way to prevail, okay? Were these man-made spears, these swords, these weapons, this armor. He thought that was the only way to prevail. However, this stuff got on David, and David knew immediately, it's not going to work. It's literally impossible, unless if God shrinks this armor, magically shrinks this metal armor and shrinks this stuff, the stuff that's going to fit me, okay, it's not going to work. So David then prepared for the battle the way that God essentially told him to prevail. Okay? Let's look at verse 39 first. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. So he first, by him saying he has not proved them, meaning, okay, first of all, we know the stuff's too big. Second of all, he's never trained with them. Okay? He doesn't know how to handle a sword. He doesn't know how to properly really move around in the armor, even if it fit him properly, okay? He's not used to it. All that extra weight, too, that's on him, he's not used to it. He's like, I haven't proved it. No matter what, this won't work. So the first thing he did, what? He put off that of the world. Those things that you would think, he has to have this. He's going into battle. They were of the world. He put them off. In verse 40, he goes, verse 40, and he took his staff in his hand, chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. What do we see here David doing? At first, when you look at it, you think, wow, he's that doesn't sound very good to me. What he has. To be honest, what he is going up against, this doesn't make sense, right? But what is he going into battle with? What is he preparing himself with? He is preparing himself with what God has provided him. So let's look real quick. What has God provided him? Well, first, God provided him with most likely it would be some sort of leather from an animal that they had most likely at their house had slaughtered to eat. Provided that leather to make his sling. Okay, so he then had that sling. Now remember, when we consider who it is, okay, we consider God here. What do we know about God? Well, not only does he know everything, but he knows it before it's going to happen. You think that maybe that lion that David had encountered, that bear that David had encountered, you think that was maybe preparing him, helping to build his faith? Because even as that young boy in the fields, that was an impossible thing. How could he have done that? You know, I can also picture David, you know, it's going to get boring. I mean, if you guys have ever seen really any animals when they're grazing, you know, it's just like, wow, this is like watching paint dry. Okay? It is extremely boring. So I can picture David there with his sling going and, you know, taking and setting up the soda cans, you know, getting further and further away, taking that sling, shooting the rocks, see how far he can get away and hitting him. So he's very, I would say very much so, he's probably a great shot, okay, with this. But even still, okay, what's the next thing God has provided? He's provided him with 5 stones here. However, one thing that does not make any sense about these rocks, okay, that he has provided with David here, is you would think, okay, he's going up against this giant with a sling. He's going to want a good jagged rock. One that can break the skin. One that can do damage. Nope. It's these nice smooth stones, perfect for skipping on the water. Ones that, at best case scenario, if it finds exposed skin on Goliath, the best case scenario, what it's going to do is give him a little bruise. Okay? What are we looking at here? It doesn't make sense. The other thing he had was just his staff with him. Okay? None of this makes sense. You know, many times in our Christian lives, when we're coming in contact with these, we have these Goliath issues coming into our lives, we may look at that in the same sense. You know, we might be thinking that we are relying on God. We may be thinking, because we're praying, okay? God has the solution there. However, we may see the solution and go, that doesn't make sense. And because that doesn't make sense, we're going to keep worrying about it. We're going to keep stressing about this. We're going to keep trying to do it in our own strength. Well, what happens? Or not what happens, what are you doing essentially? You are going, I'm just going to use this as a prop real quick. You are doing, you go and say, okay, God, this is my problem. Take it. But what you are doing is, when God reaches down to take it, what's happening? I'm not letting go. I am not truly, why? You feel this need to still be at least a little bit in control. Now some of this is because, I don't mean anything negative on the way that you were raised. I mean, I was essentially raised this way too. Even in churches, you know, you gotta, especially being, excuse me, as the man of the household. You know, I'm not saying, you know, women raised this way too, but man of the household, you are to provide, you are to work hard. You are responsible for this. You. So then we have this mentality of, I have to be in control. Okay? One thing, when we have God on our side, what we need to do is when we go and say, God, please take this, when he says, okay, we need to let go. We need to truly give it to him. Not hold on to it. It's not a borrowing thing. It's not a lending thing. We are supposed to be giving it to him. So here we have David. He's gone down. He was going to battle with confidence because he went to battle with God as the source of his strength. He was not looking at himself. Obviously, if he had looked at himself, he would be hiding and cowering with the rest of the Israelite army, maybe even tucking tail and running home, where he knew he'd be safe or safer. But no, he did not look at himself at all. So here we have David. He goes, he picks up these stones, he goes into this battle, and he in fact goes down, and when he meets this enemy down in the valley, when Goliath sees this young boy, this kid that maybe at best case scenario might come to his waist, okay? He starts making fun, of course, of David and the Israelite army as well, and King Saul, but he starts making fun. You know what? The enemy does that all the time with us in our lives. You know, always having that little whisper in our ear, you can't do it. There's no way. This is impossible. This problem is unbeatable. There's no way that you can do it. You're no good. You can't do anything right. You know what? That's the same exact thing that essentially what Goliath was doing to David. He was doing his best to put him down. Okay? If they can get to you mentally, it's going to make you helpless. It's the same way in our Christian lives. When you accept Christ into your heart, that is when the enemy, that is when Satan goes into working overtime. His 9 to 5 job is done. Now it's a 24/7 job. Trying his best. He knows he's lost you. However, he does not want you to have an easy life. He does not want you to have a relationship with God. He is going to do everything he can to put you down or to take you out. So here we have David. Once this is done, we see in the where we read this morning in opening, what David said to him. I'm just going to pull out verse 46 right now. I love this. So he first, in verse 45, he first said to, he said, "Oh, you're coming to me with this stuff, but I call the God on my side." But then he takes it further than that. He could have stopped there. I love verse 46. "This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand. I will smite thee and take thine head from thee. I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel." Okay? He takes it from just being, oh, you come to me with man-made stuff. I come to you with God on my side. That's 100% true. But you know what? He's now counterattacking the enemy with the same, you could say, device that the enemy was attacking him with, in the sense of getting at him mentally, in the mental faction. So here we have Goliath, and I'm sure after David has said this, Goliath now is mad, because not only has someone said this to him, has essentially insulted him, tried to put him down, it's this little puny kid, okay? He's mad. They start to charge at each other. They start to charge at each other, and here David, oh gosh, this giant's big. Nope. He didn't care that there was this guy coming at him that was, just seemed to just grow bigger and bigger by the second as he's getting closer. Nope. Didn't matter to him at all. Picked out one of those smooth stones. One of those perfect stones for skipping across the water. Put it in his sling. He charges, and he gets it going up above his head. And this is one very important thing to realize. Remember I said he's probably a great shot. Well, he would have looked at Goliath and said, the only exposed place on Goliath would be the face, right here. That's it. Well, if he was thinking in his own strength, what can he say? Well, maybe I could put on his eye. Right? So this is what David did, though. Like I said, very important. He gets going, he lets go. right at Goliath's face. At this point, what is he saying? This is what I have been able to do, God. That through the strength that you have given me, that's what I've done. God, take over. Well, with anything that does not have its own propulsion system going through the air, what does it do once you let go of it? Slows down, right? Well, in this case, the way that I'm going to explain it to you, God then took over, put a little jet engine on the back of that thing, and that stone sped up. And not only did it speed up, it didn't. It's not a thing of when it struck him. When it struck Goliath on the forehead, when it struck him, it did not. Well, I guess you'd say it did, but it didn't just give him a headache. Okay, it didn't just give him a big old welt like what I've done. Excuse me, several times in my work when I forget there's a low-hanging pipe or something and walk into it. He doesn't get any sort of lump like that. Instead, when it hits, it says that it's sunk in. That smooth little stone had gained enough speed. When you think, if you have been in the medical field enough to know that how thick, on just the normal, average human, okay, how thick the forehead is, how thick the bone is of the skull here, you go and you multiply that to how thick it would be for someone the size of Goliath. It is impossible, here we have that word again, for that smooth little stone to do anything to that bone. It wouldn't even chip it. And yet it says, instead, that stone, when it hit, it sunk in. Okay? It broke through Goliath's really thick head. Okay? And through his really thick skull, it broke through and did so much brain damage, it killed him. Goliath drops. You can imagine what his, because you can, when you read, you'll see that when Goliath came down, he wasn't alone. When he first came down, he had that other soldier with him that carried his shield. He had the shield bearer with him, at least originally. I'm sure that when he charged David, he luckily for that soldier, he probably told the shield bearer to stay behind. You're not needed in this point. So he gets, imagine that shield bearer standing back, however distance it was, when Goliath all of a sudden is running, and all of a sudden, boom, flat on his face, dead. I can only imagine what was going through that not to mention the Philistine army, okay, but that shield bearer who was there, who worked constantly and trained one-on-one with this champion. To see the champion, he may not have even seen exactly what happened. He may have just seen from behind Goliath just go down, face flat, dead. Wow. Goliath, why did Goliath lose the battle? Well, first of all, he trusted in himself. Okay, he thought he was unbeatable. And I can tell you a couple other things about it. Okay, he was on the wrong side. And Goliath, he did not lose to David. Remember how David approached this, how I said, okay, the way that David approached it, the strength of David, even his possibly perfect shot with that sling, with that smooth stone, it wouldn't have even hurt him that much. Okay, best case scenario, like I said, either a good bruise or a possibly putting an eye out. Okay, that's it. Goliath did not lose to David. He lost to the Lord. He lost to God that day. So why did David win the battle? Well, first, he trusted in God. Okay? And also, David knew that he was beatable. When David looked at Goliath, he did not say, that problem is unbeatable. He said, nope, that problem is beatable. He knew that he was on God's side, and David won with the Lord. David knew this ahead of time. The faith that this young boy had, he had more faith than the whole Israelite army. Okay? The faith he had, remember what he said as Goliath and him, as they have sort of met a little bit of distance away, and Goliath starts making fun of him, and what he says, what David replies back, his faith was that of, I know I'm not fighting against you, Goliath. It's God. I know God can beat you, so I know God's going to deliver you into my hand today. I know that this is going to happen. It wasn't a flippant hope of, I hope that God comes through. I hope that God is actually on my side. No, he knew it. This big problem that was presented to him, it wasn't big to him. Why? He wasn't looking at it in that sense. He was looking at it as, this problem isn't bigger than God. God can handle this. One other thing that I'm just going to give you right here too is, David could have very easily have stopped there. Once Goliath hit the ground, he could have stopped there. He did what he said he was going to, right? He, as what the Israelite army and everything would have seen, he took out the champion. He could have stopped there. But see, remember how I said how the enemy loves to come at you mentally? Well, what is the best thing besides just taking out the champion? Okay, there's one other thing that in this case David knew he had to finish off the enemy with on the mental aspect of things. Because of course, they're first going to be, they're affected mentally, but then it could be, at that point, maybe not so much a fear, but an anger. Okay? David took it a step further. He goes up to Goliath, pulls Goliath's enormous sword, possibly as big as him, okay? Pulls Goliath's sword up. I can just see him basically pulling it out and dragging it back around as he gets lined up. Takes everything in him to get that sword to lift up. Cuts off Goliath's head. It is at that point he took the Philistine army from being possibly, angry to now being scared out of their minds. It says imagine this, imagine seeing this, an army of giants running away from a little boy. That is the picture you would see. But what's the difference? David was not standing there, you will say, on the battlefield by himself. What you would have instead was you see this younger boy standing here, right behind him, is that older brother standing there with his arms crossed. This little boy, as you might see, who has, I'll use the term, he's on the playground. He's going to go and confront. He's sick and tired of this bully. Goes to confront the bully. He's there, and all of a sudden the bully gets like his face goes pale. Why? That little boy's big brother has walked up behind him. Arms crossed, all of a sudden that bully has gone from being strong. He has gone from being the big one. He is now scared out of his mind. And that is what has happened to, that older brother doesn't even have to say a word. Doesn't have to swing a fist. That bully is all of a sudden he's done. Nope, I'm done. That is what we see happen to the Philistines. So how do we win these battles in our lives? These difficulties. You might say, oh, well, Nate, you just don't understand. Maybe you have gone through or you are going through a breakup, a divorce, bankruptcy, or it could be just as something as, I call it simple, but I know it still gives a lot of issues. You have a car that's on its last leg, just something that is really big to you. Nate, you don't understand. No, you know what? It's possible I've never been in that situation, in which case I don't understand. However, one thing I want you to understand is that problem, no matter how big it may seem to you, no matter how looming it might be to you, God can handle it. Like I said before, when you go to prayer, when you are asking God to take this, whatever it is, this big problem, this Goliath from you, you need to let go of it. You need to truly give it to him. Now I will say, that first time of letting go of control is going to be a little difficult. But you know what? After you do that first time, second time, a little easier, third time, even easier, and eventually it'll get to be where that you are going to have that mentality of David. You will see the problem and go say, that problem, that's not that big of a problem. My God can handle it. I know that God can take care of it. We need to prepare ourselves for the battle. We need to gather those stones that God has provided for us. We need to grasp hold of that vision. We need to go at that enemy head on with God on our side. When we put our faith in God, we can know that we are on the winning side. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. We are not wrestling, we're not fighting against man-made things here. Just as I have been talking and speaking on, we are fighting against the enemy here. Okay? And they are going, as Christians especially, they are going to go at us in a mental, in a spiritual sense. They don't want us to have a relationship with God. Like I said, they know they've already lost us, but they're going to do their best to pull us down and hurt us. Why? That's the only way they can, I'll use the term hurt, okay? That's the only way they can get at God in any sense of the term, if you want to put it that way, okay? In the sense of him seeing his children being hurt, his children suffering, and that. But you know what? It doesn't have to be that way. It does not. They're still going to come at you. I'm not saying that they won't. Oh, they will. The closer, the more of a relationship you have with God, the more the enemy is going to throw those fiery darts at you. The more they're going to whisper in your ear and say that you can't do it. Say that you're no good. We just need to remember one thing. As Christians, when you have Christ in your heart, we have God on our side. God did not simply give the victory to the Israelites. Okay? And in this case, you could say, even though the Israelites would have, in that sense of the term, you could say in the history books, it would have gone down, the Israelites won. Well, the only way they were able to have that win, you could say, on their side, was because of a little boy who had faith in his God. He knew how big his God was. So I'm going to present that question again to you right now. How big is your God? Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much for your word. And Lord, I thank you for all the many accounts that are in the Bible, Lord, that we can glean from, that we can learn from. And Lord, I especially love this one, Lord. Just no simpler way, Lord, of showing us and teaching us how it is that what can be done when we have our complete faith in you. Lord, I just pray for everyone here, Lord, anyone that might be watching or listening. Lord, I just pray that we would all consider this question that has been presented this morning. How big is our God? Lord, I pray that every one of us here this morning, Lord, would, as we consider this, Lord, any issues that might be in our lives, Lord, that we would, if we are holding on to it, for whatever reason, Lord, that today, Lord, would be the day that we would give that up. Lord, that we would take our hand off of it. We would give up control, Lord, to you, and have that faith, Lord, and be shown to us exactly how big you really are. Prove to us, Lord, that exactly that you truly can do anything. Lord, that you can take care of anything that we need done. Lord, I just ask, Lord, I also ask of you this morning that, Lord, to bear on the hearts of the people here. Lord, if there is anybody here this morning or watching online that have not accepted you into their hearts, they don't have this assurance. They don't know. They have not been able to experience this thing of being able to have someone on their side that is unbeatable. Having someone on their side that can take care of these issues in their lives. Lord, I just pray that these people would reach out, Lord, this morning here, or Lord, if it's someone else, just have them reach out to someone they know who knows you. And Lord, that they would see their need for salvation, and Lord, that today would be the day they accept you into their hearts. And Lord, I ask these things in your name. Amen.